Every few years, a game comes along that takes everyone by surprise with its ambitious reveal and lofty promises, but then proceeds to completely miss the mark that they set for themselves because I guess there's just something exciting about fighting from behind instead of just being honest with people from the start. Some games have managed to succeed in that uphill battle, games like No Man's Sky and Rainbow Six Siege come to mind, but not every game can be so lucky, and from the looks of it, The Day Before is the latest example of an overly ambitious team promising the world and then being extremely uncommunicative about the fact that the world was no longer on the menu when the game came out. Now, I imagine if you clicked on this video, then you know the story behind this game, but for those that don't, I'll give you the quick TLDR. The Day Before was promised as an open-world survival zombie MMO, basically another version of the DayZ concept, but when it was first announced, it had a ton of goodwill around it because, frankly, it looked really good. But it was delayed time and time again, originally set for a June 2022 release, then pushed to early 2023, and then it was pulled from Steam due to a trademark issue, then it was delayed again to November 2023, and then delayed to December, and it finally hit Steam Early Access on December 7th. And all the while, a lot of people online started to feel like the game itself was a scam, like the game didn't even exist. Because every new piece of marketing looked either too good to be true, or it was a noticeable step backwards from the original 2021 gameplay trailer. And it also didn't help that the devs were almost impressively bad at easing fan concerns. And it's been made fairly obvious at this point that the project was both too ambitious for a studio of this size and revealed far too early, and led by people who weren't really all that dedicated to the original vision. But the day has finally come, The Day Before is out, and let's see what we got. Ah, I see. Also, I really don't blame you if you didn't actually know The Day Before finally launched, because despite being one of the most wish-listed games on Steam, it was nowhere to be found on Steam's homepage on launch day, which I can only imagine was intentional, because if this was the kind of reception I was getting, I probably wouldn't want to be on the homepage either. But I have a feeling this release date was intentional, because it launched the same day as the Game Awards, meaning no one would be talking about it, and also it launched the same day as 1 million TGA Steam sales, so nobody would be looking for it, and the devs could just sweep it under the rug and keep the internet outrage to a minimum while they try and figure out what the fuck they're supposed to do next. And the tragic thing about The Day Before is despite the downgrades from the early footage and despite the removal of a ton of things from the 2021 gameplay, the game still had a ton of potential. I compared it to DayZ earlier, but honestly, a game that does the DayZ formula but prettier and smoother and better optimized, that could be a huge hit. And it really looked like The Day Before was going to be that hit. But as it turns out, the devs couldn't have even been bothered to release a functional product despite all of these delays. You had all the time in the world and nobody would have even thought twice about it if you decided you needed more time. And this is what you served the people who stuck with you through it all. This is what you took their $40 for. After all the waiting, after all the drama, after all the reassurance that no one was being scammed and the game really was all you cracked it up to be, this is what you release. Absolutely fucking insulting. So let's read some Steam reviews. The #1 most helpful review at the time I'm making this video is from Mickey, who says, "The day before refund. The day before we got scammed. The day before the devs apologized. The day before it's pulled from Steam. Is that too low? Am I going too low?
I can go lower.
The day before the studio closes, the day before resumes get updated, the day before the job fair." Scarred says, "For every like this review gets, I will consume 1 spoonful of mayonnaise." 1,840 people found this review helpful. Username checks out. Not recommended. The day before you get scammed. The day before we played something else. The day before we danced on your grave. The day before I monetized your failure. Not recommended. It's a shit show. It's always gonna be bad at release for any game, but this game does not even have functioning settings. Try changing resolution. I dare you.
Oh yeah? Yeah! I like double dog dare ya!
The Shield CTV says, "Started game, did the cutscene waking up, and my character was out of the map falling through the map for eternity. Great sign for a good start. Also, no one is ever gonna read this review, so I'm gonna say that I'm gay, and no one will ever know it." Not recommended. This is not an open world MMO. This is a small area extraction shooter. The devs deleted all the old videos showing the open world elements. The city is dead and there are barely any open buildings. There are no survival elements in the game because it's based on being an extraction-based shooter game like Tarkov. Shame, the game could have been the next DayZ. I would not recommend buying this game. Most of the city isn't open anyways. This is probably the worst part of the whole thing. The game was marketed as an open world MMO survival game similar to DayZ, and at the time that I'm making this video, the Steam description still calls it an open world MMO. But to my understanding, that's just straight up not what the game is. And yeah, sure, I haven't played the fucking thing because I'm not gonna drop $40 on the fucking thing. But to my understanding, this game is just straight up not an open world MMO. Like, it's just not. Which really explains why the devs have been seemingly purging all their old marketing videos from the internet, because they clearly changed direction at some point and didn't want anyone to know about it. You go to the studio's YouTube page and they've just straight up deleted everything that's more than a year old, which certainly isn't shady at all when you're releasing a game. It really seems like they wanted to make this big open world DayZ type game, but then realized they didn't have the time, talent, resources, patience, or some combination of all those things, and then tried to salvage something from the ashes of the game that they initially set out to make. Hence the finished product, basically, yeah, just being shitty Escape from Tarkov. It's such a shame. Not recommended. No melee in a survival game? There's seriously no melee? That's the best Smash game, though.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
Not recommended. I would like to start off by saying I understand this is an early access game and there can be a lot of problems when you start. Outside of server issues because the game is new, every time I would load into the game, I would load into a spot I could not get out of. I had to eventually start a new build to start the game correctly. After all that, the game was very buggy and unplayable because of it. For now, this game isn't for me. I hope it gets better in time and may pick it up again in the future. And I just can't wrap my head around why they'd release something like this. You could have delayed it again. You could have had more time. No one would have blinked if you said you needed more time. You've delayed it 50 times already. You didn't have to release the game like this. Like, literally, you didn't have to. Because, like, even though there was so much controversy around this game, even though there were so many people saying this game was a scam and it didn't even exist, if they had just released a decent or like a bare bones zombie survival MMO, if they had released the most carbon copy DayZ clone, it probably would have sold decently. But instead, you had to pull the wool over everyone's eyes, and now this game is never going to make a comeback even if you do fix everything. Like, if the goal was to make as much money as possible, and you had given up on the original ambitious version that you had advertised, literally all you had to do to still make money was make a bare bones DayZ clone out of the Unreal assets you already made. And a lot of people would have given you the benefit of the doubt, or at least given you the mixed rating instead of overwhelmingly negative. And you could have, tried to build something off of that and tried to pivot off of that. But no, you just completely tapped out of even trying to give people something close to what you advertised. I honestly don't think this game's gonna stay up. I'm fully expecting this game to go the way of Overkill's Walking Dead. They say that they're expecting to be in early access for 6 to 8 months. That's what the Steam description says. I think it's gonna get removed. I don't think it's gonna make it that long. It's gonna get removed from Steam. There may or may not be refunds issued, and the studio's gonna move on like nothing happened. Like, they already tapped out from giving us the game they promised. There's no fucking shot they actually stick with this thing. I would be shocked if this game is still live in 8 months. Geeky Raven, not recommended. So let's start with getting into the game, which is virtually impossible. I spent 10 to 15 minutes trying to get into a 32 population server, hoping to enjoy a PvE survival game. Got in and played for like 40 minutes. Next time spent 4 to 5 minutes. Spawned in on the map and got killed while spawning in. The game has a massive amount of problems. Not enough servers for the people playing it. I am getting a refund because this has been an absolute disappointment. 32 population lobbies in a game that was marketed as an MMO survival game. 32 person lobbies, that's it. This studio does not give a fuck about anything. Not recommended. Seems like the game still isn't released. You get to create your character with very limited customization options, just to get brought to a server list where every single server is full without the option to queue. There is no information for these servers, no indication on how many players can be in these servers or account other than full or high, no information on server ping, and no option for community servers. Again, this studio just doesn't care. It's one thing for a game to come out short of expectations, but with a team that cares about it, or with some kind of potential for getting it to where it was promised to be initially, but this? Like, there's no saving this. This fundamentally is not the game we were promised, and this studio couldn't be any more blatant about how little they care about what they actually promised. And it's like I said before, they could have at least made some money off of this game if they just made a bare-bones survival MMO out of the assets that they had already made, but they couldn't have even been fucked to do that. Could have proven all the naysayers wrong with such minimal effort, but instead we got this. Not recommended. The UI broke the second I logged in, then couldn't connect to a server. When I finally got into a server, I fell through the map and died. Do not play this game. Can't wait for the Functional Floors update coming in 2029. Except, no, not actually. This game is never getting patched. Not recommended. Turns out it is a real game. Kinda wish it wasn't. Not recommended, not the game that was advertised. Zombies look awful and don't path correctly, mostly running into trash bags on the street and getting stuck in an endless attacking animation. If you're lucky enough to not die in the intro cutscene and get stuck inside a room not being able to interact with anything, then you get to experience the day before, where the servers are super laggy and get to experience a loot simulator with clunky movement and combat. Also, running out of bullets means you're screwed with no melee. Refund pending. The fact that this is a game where you can run out of ammo and literally have no way of doing anything afterwards is just... God, like, I'm dumbfounded as to what happened to the 2021 gameplay trailer. Like, truly. If that version of the game ever did exist, what happened to it? And if it never actually did exist and it was just meant to scam us, why the fuck didn't you just look at the positive reception to that trailer and take the next 2 years to just make the game that people were interested in? The only reason people know The Day Before exists is because of a trailer that had some decent ideas. Even if you didn't intend on making that version of the game initially, why did you not decide to make it after you saw the reception to the trailer? Like, it's not like you were in a hurry to get something out. Like, I don't understand this. This is the dumbest scam I've ever seen. Are you wasting my money again, son? There's always one. There's always one. Not recommended. I'm sorry to say that this is not as bad as we expected. It's actually worse. I'm sorry, Fantastic. I really was hoping for the best, but the game is absolutely unplayable. Game seems to weirdly lock at 60 Hz, stutters on my RTX 4090, servers are extremely laggy, nothing is explained in the game, it doesn't even show you the keybinds, teleported through the wall in the very first moment of the game. The zombies have like 5 different models, there's like 2 different sound effects for zombies, and this isn't even half of what's wrong with this game. I'll be refunding. This game is at least 3 years away from being anywhere where it should be. God, this is just depressing. It's just depressing. I can only read a couple more of these. It's just kind of sad at this point. Like, the comedy's gone. Comedy's gone. It's just sad now. Not recommended. Spawned in with the flashing red screen, was getting mauled by zombies before I even fully loaded in, and was pinned down between them and died. Alt F4'd, uninstalled, refunded, just like how everyone else is going to do it. Okay, this last one just pisses me off. This last one will get you riled up a bit, and then I'll let you go about your day, okay? Recommended. Like every game with a lot of hype, people are going to review bomb it because gamers have unrealistic expectations. Most bad reviews are because they can't get into a server. Have some patience and keep trying. I got in, I played a little, it's pretty fun, but it's very early access still. If you are expecting something else, maybe reconsider what you think early access is, leaving a positive review to help combat the crybabies with no patience. So, just to be clear on what you actually seem to think about this. You think the game is being review bombed because of unrealistic expectations, which is bullshit because the only reason people had the expectations they did was because of what the devs deliberately promised. If you were excited for the game that was promised to you, it's not your fault if that game isn't real. You also say most of the negative reviews are because people couldn't get into a server, which is valid fucking criticism. Also, if you admit people are leaving negative reviews because of valid criticism, by definition, it is not review bombing, you fucking airhead. And you also say that if you are having issues with the game, it's because you expect too much from an early access game. Again, people would not be expecting anything from this game that the devs didn't deliberately promise. They're charging $40 for this. This isn't just a matter of a game having rampant technical issues, it's also a matter of the game itself not being what was promised. But the real kicker about this review is that this is a positive review in which you don't say anything positive about the game. All you say is, it's pretty fun, which tells us nothing. You're openly writing off people's legitimate criticisms because it's an early access game. Genuinely, honestly, stop writing reviews. Leave this to the grown-ups with critical thinking skills, please. I don't really have a good conclusion to this video other than just reiterating that even if the intention with the day before was to scam everybody, you guys are the worst scammers I've ever seen. You could have just made a shittier version of DayZ and you would have made some money. You could have made a shittier version of the game you promised and the game that got attention, and you would have made some money. Shit, in the time that you've had this thing working, you probably could have just made the game you were promising and made a lot of money. But no, instead, we get this. A barely functional pseudo-extraction shooter that nobody asked for, made out of the assets of the game we did ask for, and the game that couldn't have possibly taken you more time than you already took to make this fucking thing. If the goal was to make a bunch of easy money off of people, this was the dumbest way you possibly could have done it. And if your intentions were genuinely good, and this is actually what you thought people would enjoy, I just don't know what to say anymore. The day before was delisted. Toodles.